Hello, everyone. This is Niladri Choudhuri, CEO of Excellentra and the Chief Organizer for the DevOps India Summit. This year in 2022, DevOps India Summit has started with a new initiative, which is the research project to have a survey to bring out the customer and service provider relationship in a digital transformation. We have seen various organizations coming out with different surveys, but all focused on product, all focused on the different frameworks and so on. However, there is very few organizations in the world which really works on their own without the help of any service providers. So we have not seen the voice of service providers coming out. And here, this is our effort to bring that out. We have three of us who are part of creating the survey. We have with us Meenal Meenakshi, and we have Santanoo Bhattacharjee. So welcome Santanoo, welcome Meenal. So let's go ahead and discuss what, how, and why we started off. So I'll start with Santanoo on why did we choose to have a survey on the new ways of working?
Thank you, Niladri, for the introduction. So to be very honest, and I'll echo what exactly you have said, which is something everybody knows, that we have almost multiple surveys coming out every year. But in none of the surveys, we have seen that the highlight is how service providers or the CSPs impact how the transformation in this current generation is happening. So we see that what are the key trends, how are things moving across the industries, or how are companies driving the booming hypes of extended transformation or new ways of doing things. But in none of the surveys, or I can say in almost all the leading surveys, we could not quantify what we heard, how service providers are impacting this transformation. Now, coming from that background myself, we know we work with multiple clients, we work with multiple industries, and we have seen that time to time, our talent, our implementations, as well as our involvement on these journeys are very, very important. And we have quantified our involvement in a lot of ways where we have seen since the last 8 years, we were involved in a lot of transformation part. But one thing which really deep down made me a bit motivated to come up with a survey specifically focusing on the service provider angle is how are we valuing the service providers in terms of pushing the boundaries or creating new milestones in this whole digital transformation space. So that's basically the whole craft we have done. We have given them an angle of how we see and how we also contribute to this whole progress. And this survey will talk a lot about the involvement of a lot of factors, but predominantly it will have a service provider angle of how the talent pool or how the contribution of service providers are helping us keep the pace of transformation the way we perceive it. I think, we're on mute.
Yeah, it's very important for us to bring out this. And I would also want to hear from another author of this survey, Meenal Meenakshi, on the same point, because it's very important to understand why each one of us went out and came together to come out with this kind of a survey, which is not there currently anywhere in the globe.
Exactly. So thanks, Niladri, and again, completely echoing with what you and Santanoo just mentioned. So we are all living in this VUCA world, right, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And we all understand now that change is the only constant, and organizations are continuously striving to basically adapt and adopt to new ways of working. So what we have understood is that the only way to be able to succeed is to adapt to new ways of working. And while we were talking about this, and this topic has very beautifully also been presented in your book, Adapting to Digital Infinity. So while we all came together and we were discussing about it, we really found out that there are lot of researches, lot of information, document, talks, surveys available today, which can guide an organization to through their transformation journey, right? We often talk about various frameworks, we talk about tools, technologies, automation, we talk about the barriers to these digital transformation, we talk about the cultural changes, the human aspect, the people aspect, and the leadership aspect. We also understand why it is important to continuously upskill. And we have also seen, especially now, that there is also equal focus being given on topics like security, because the importance of this now is irrefutable, especially in this post-pandemic era where digitization has been propelled across industries, right? And also the topics like sustainability, where every IT organization is trying to really contribute their bit to help the planet. But there was this one very important aspect, a very key component that we found missing in most of these conversations, or even across the various leading surveys that we reference to around, say, digital transformation or DevOps, DevSecOps, SRE. And that was, and what we also noticed is that this key aspect is also sadly missed out in, say, the digital transformation roadmap of various organizations. And that is the role which these service providers, system integrators, partners, and vendors provide. Because we all agree that they very heavily contribute towards our digital transformation journey. They contribute in building the product or the solution which we want to offer to the customer. As Santanu was just explaining, right, that while every organization is trying to accelerate its pace of digital transformation, and not any organization can take care for every aspect on its own, we rely heavily on all these service providers. It is very important to understand their view, the contributions they bring in with regards to skills, talent readiness, technology, and process alignments. These are all very critical. And in the survey, we really want to highlight what is the current mindset, what is the current state, how is the collaboration between organizations and the service providers, and how the service providers and vendors collaborate with different say organizations, and join together in the digital transformation journey. So with this survey, we really want to tackle those questions, understand the current assessment, and also perhaps be then able to come out with new ways of working which can enable or strengthen this collaboration between the organization and the service providers. So this is what we will see coming up in the survey.
Very well said, Meenal. So let's look at the survey. We have broken it up into 5 sections. And one is we are talking about framework adoption. And one of the points which I always think is that we have so many different frameworks and we get fixed to the frameworks. And that's the reason I have written a blog also saying we should move out of the framework silo. We have the organization silo, we have the technology silo, but now we have the framework silo. And that framework related aspect is very important. I mean, whether we look at a customer, whether we look at the service provider, the question is, does the customer really bother about framework, or do they bother about the outcome? And here I would like to know from Shantanu as to what are we looking at to bring out from the section on framework adoption.
It's indeed a very important section as a part of the whole composition of the survey, and this is also an opening block of the survey once you start taking the survey questionnaire. So what we understand from on a very high level from a framework part of view is, if I talk about a cohort who are working together for a common goal, frameworks or ideologies or processes are something which is already defined and they blindly follow. But a lot of times when they start, because these are the team members. So these are the guys who are heavy lifting this whole process guidelines that have been imposed on them, or the things that they already have available and they can't question it. But internally, they see through the whole journey of their activities that there are some things which are not applicable in the context, or maybe we are simply templating some common practices, some common frameworks, which are not even applicable to us. So these are the typical scenarios when we see maybe a framework which has a market leading standard, or maybe a proven success for some leading companies that we typically emulate or we follow, but they may not be applicable in our context. So the first thing that we have to introspect and answer is that whatever framework we are adopting and we are trying to work upon and start building upon our team of 10s and so on, are they actually applicable in the context we work on? Is it something that we may need to improvise and create our own benchmarks? So that's one of the key composition of this whole category. We are trying to understand, is a simple lift and shift of a module or framework, what we see working for everybody else, is going to work for me? If not, I have that liberty to challenge it and make it better for everybody who are working like us. So category which is more practically driven, and this is a category which will help us create some standards on our own with the best practices that is already known, is what this category will give it to us. We will answer basis our experience. We will answer basis what are the market leading standards and how can they can be far better. And that's how this particular category will help us catalog the next 4 categories that we will go into slowly. So the one value add that I can vouch in for the survey is the entire transition of the 5 categories that we are talking about has been so pragmatically kept that once you move along the survey, you will understand how each and every input of yours in one category is impacting your answer in the other category that you're supposed to answer now. I'll take a pause and let Meenal take a note on this, because this is a very interesting category to open up the survey with.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Santanu. So, and it's not only very interesting, the most important category, and as you mentioned, a baseline to continue further. So it has to provide, this category basically provides us an understanding of the current technology environment amongst different organizations. And as Niladri was telling, right? So, and maybe to what you mentioned, I summarize it generally using one statement, that you really need to find the right hammer for your nail, right? Because not one size fits all. And it is important that what is the problem that you are trying to solve, and which methodology, which framework would really fit for that specific need within your organization. And quite often, as Niladri mentioned, that even within organization, you will find adoption of multiple such frameworks. So within organization, you could have some teams following ITIL, few teams following the Scrum, Agile, few teams using the DevOps principles, few teams following the SRE. And then we also have the service providers who, if these information, these technology understanding, this is not well known, then they might, for example, be a bit surprised that, okay, what is now the role of SRE here? Yeah, we know that SRE is important in terms of maintaining resiliency. But what exactly are they playing an important role? So it is very important for us to understand that, okay, what are these different technology, what are these different frameworks that are being adapted within an organization, and how well are they communicating with each other? Or are these frameworks again creating silos amongst themselves? Now, this is something really important, because we, based on the inputs that we would get out of the survey, we would be able to really, prove the hypothesis that we have, that if there are too many frameworks being adopted, and it can also create silos amongst themselves. So it is important for us to understand how within your organization these frameworks are being handled. How are you? So everyone is adopting a particular framework with a certain goal in mind, with a certain objective in mind. So how are you then really measuring whether or not this is effective? How are you measuring that, yes, you are achieving that targeted goal, and whether what are the KPIs that you are using? So what are the metrics that is being used in different organizations within different teams, and what is, say, the leadership engagement, what is the motivation that the employees have to really understand and take work towards adopting and adapting their ways of working, which is in line with these new methodologies that are in place. So as mentioned, these are really very interesting set of questions which will really give us a lot of inputs on the importance that each of this is being given in different organizations and how it is really working out. And based on this, we can also then really understand how good, how much, to what extent we need to again further adapt and adopt to really pull the best benefit out of the different possibilities that we have. Yeah, so this is what we would see coming in from this section of the survey.
Yes. And one more point that we are trying to focus here is, or bring out, is that does this kind of a thing which is there, is it only for the purpose of being a unique selling point for the service provider, or are they really looking at what suits best for the customer? And as I mentioned in the beginning itself, does the customer really care about the frameworks or the outcome? We cannot leave it here, because we talked about framework, we talked about the next point that we have to think of is what are we doing with these? And what we are doing is transformation. And today everybody is talking about digital transformation. Everybody is talking about moving to the cloud, using new technologies and so on. So here we have a category for transformation. We are trying to outline the top initiatives every organization is striving to implement. The goal is to understand the key challenges, the equation drivers, the people, process, technology aspects, and how collaboration between the partners and service providers are happening and have accelerated this journey. So now it's like a triangle. You have the customer, you have the SI or the system integrator, and you have the cloud service provider. So we have to look at three different areas when we look at only the customer and service providers in it. I would go back to Meenal first this time to get her points on what and why we have put this in our survey.
Right. So as I started, and as also you mentioned, especially with the pandemic, the digital transformation agenda across industries have really accelerated, and we now hear more than often that every industry, every segment is now moving in their journey, taking on the journey of digital transformation. So as you mentioned, it is very important to understand those key drivers, the people, the process, the technology aspects, because all this are very important. Because when we talk about digital transformation, it is not only about implementing new tools and technologies. Of course, that is definitely an important part, bringing in automation. But you need to then also have people with the right skill set in place. You need to have people who are ready to take on that transformation. You need to have people who are motivated enough to really go that way. And then you also need to understand about how you have to streamline your processes, because then your traditional process will not work. You have to also align your processes to the new methodologies, to the new tools and technologies that are being used. And a very critical aspect here then is also how are we interacting with our service providers? So is our alignment, is our agreement with the service providers still limited to, okay, we need the service and you're just providing that service to us? Because in our journey of digital transformation, that is not something that will help. We are all talking about, delivering product outcome based services. We are all talking about delivering experience to our customers. We are no more talking about just delivering software or delivering product. We are talking about delivering business value. So the same applies also to the service providers, to the vendors, right? So their agreement has to be more in terms of okay, your agree that you are providing this necessary outcome which the customer wants. So it is also important to understand how in this journey of digital transformation, how we are aligning with our service providers. What is our perception? Do we consider them as partners, or and does everyone agree that yes, they are partners, or they are just vendors providing the necessary services? And what as we told, right, there are so many triggers for this digital transformation within an organization. So we need to understand how the organizations are engaging within the, say, people or the employees within your organization, and how are we also interacting with the employees who are part of maybe the partner ecosystem or part of the service providers, because they need to be equally in line. They need to agree with your vision. They need to see the same vision. They need to understand that what is the needed outcome, right? They need to work in alignment, in sync, and work together as one team to deliver that necessary outcome. And only when everyone is coming together in one page, has the same vision, has the same mission, will this be easily possible. Otherwise, we will run into, again, different challenges with different service providers who would have their own set of processes and guidelines in place. So that's the reason why the topic of transformation is very important. And um, we also need to understand that now we talk about really driving this transformation in a fast pace. So it is, we need to understand how much importance we are then giving in bringing in all these employees within your organization, within the partner ecosystem, service provider ecosystem, coming together to deliver that common goal. And this is how we think we are able to then accelerate the digital transformation. And this is
Right.
what the survey is also about, to understand the current state, the current assessment of how organizations are really managing their alignment with the service providers, their contracts with the service providers.
Right. So Shantanu, what was your thoughts when we came together on the transformation
This
pillar?
is an interesting category. So, see, the basic outline of the OKR of transformation that we call it is understanding when you actually need that. So now there is too much of a noise buzzing around this whole word transformation. If I just talk about ops, I can give you 10 variants of ops in the last 3 years. It's too confusing for everybody. So now when we talk about ops, it was just DevOps, and eventually slowly it transitioned to DevSecOps. In the last 2 years, we have XOps, MLOps, AIOps, whatever you call it. So data ops and so on. So the thing is, if I'm only talking about ops. Now, if I talk about the process change, a lot of new things, new frameworks, new models, they are coming in picture daily. So it's continuously evolving. Going back to the basic question, how much of the need that we are trying to position for the journey of transformation that we are trying to be a part of is actually motivated, or is it influenced, or is it a market researched and well-driven collaborative approach of doing the transformation? So this whole block that we are trying to put up here in this transformation category, questions on us feeling that are we actually ready with the technology base that the transformation journey we are planning to put up is aligned to? Is it a correct way? And the main question that we will be summarizing of this category is the pace of technology transformation and your journey of transformation is in a correct way and in the correct time. A lot of people influence when we talk about transformation. So our leadership, as well as our technical core SME team, as well as the SIs who are a part of our overall practice. So keeping aside what we are transforming, the main question is how are we transforming? Exactly from a point of view, I see a lot of transformation and a lot of POC cases where we have invested ample amount of time to get the value we seek going into vain. It's futile because we are not clear if we are certainly sure of the transformation that we are investing right now in is needed for us or not. So going with the buzzwords, going with the leadership view will not help you in the ground reality. How much close are we with what we need of the transformation, and who is helping you drive that transformation? A lot of times I've done onboardings of customers where I've seen our SI contributions or our teams engaged in that have heavily motivated customers to redecide or maybe reevaluate their entire architecture of what toolings they want to use or what processes they want to use. So I've seen a lot of clients eagerly waiting for our expertise where we have to put in that these are the best practices we have seen, and the ones that suits you is not something what you have told. I can give you a better variant than what you have because this has worked time to time and it is tested. So how are we collaborating with our customers and how are we making them much more successful in what they seek from us? This will help us understand that market reality.
Great. And we are also trying to find out from our service providers, are they ready for the new way of transformation? Not the big bang, capital T transformation, but the evolutionary transformation, the small t transformation, right? So that brings us to two of the pillars that we have talked about. There are three more pillars, but don't worry, we are not going to talk about all the pillars today. We will come back again to hear about the human capital and skills, because everything, whether it's customer, whether it's the people, a customer or the service provider, it is all about people and their skills. So we will talk about it in our next episode. We will talk about security, as Meenal had already mentioned that it is one of the top priorities for most of the CXOs that is there. And we are definitely going to talk about another new aspect, which we have to think of as leaders, as practitioners, that is sustainability. How do we make our planet better, even after taking care of everything? So these three we are keeping back for the next installment, and keep putting your views by taking the survey. There is also a chance to win a $250 Amazon card and a 10,000 rupees Amazon card. So look forward to getting all your inputs, and we can create a great insight in the report, which will be released in DOIS 22 on August 26th, 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot.